What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here to give you the fatal flaw for every NFL contender this 2020 season. We are 5 games in to the NFL season, and I want to give you the top 10 contenders in each conference and then go team by team and analyze what the fatal flaw, the missing piece, the back-breaking element of this roster or this team is that could keep this contender from going all the way and winning the Lombardi Trophy. Before I give you the fatal flaw for every NFL contender in 2020, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and also comment your opinion. What is the fatal flaw for every NFL contender? If you just want to leave the fatal flaw for your favorite team, let me know in the comment section below. And don't forget to head over to Instagram and follow Loyal to the Game, the new startup Madden League here on the Bottom Line View that I and a group of friends will be covering on the channel. So please go over there on social media, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. The way I'll be ordering each team in each conference is by their current record through 5 weeks this NFL season. So no previous bias. This isn't a power ranking. This is just more about the fatal flaw, not about the order of the team that I talk about. Let's kick it off in the AFC at number 10 with the Houston Texans. Now, first off, many people would say the Texans, being a 1-win team, 1-4, are not a contender, but I had to put 10 each on each side. The Texans just were able to make it out over the Miami Dolphins, in my opinion, as a top 10 team in the AFC. I just used my personal bias for that and who I thought was the better team or more of the realistic threat to make noise, make the playoffs, and reach the Super Bowl. For the Houston Texans, they're obviously a 1-win team for a reason. They are extremely flawed. And just about the only hope they have right now is Deshaun Watson. Everything other than Deshaun Watson, number 4, their quarterback, that is their fatal flaw. It's simple. Their offensive line is way worse than last year. It's seen major regression. Their offensive line has ranked 32nd in pass protection in adjusted sack rate, allowing the most sacks in the NFL so far in 2020. Their defense also is not very good. 32nd in turnovers forced, 32nd in time allowed per drive, and plays ran. The Texans just aren't good. They can't protect their star quarterback, and then they can't defend their end zone. They can't allow other teams from scoring on them. So Watson really doesn't have any hope to make this team relevant. At number 9, the 9th contender in the AFC, the Indianapolis Colts at 3-2, currently sitting second place in the AFC South. The Indianapolis Colts' fatal flaw to me is Phillip Rivers, but specifically to Phillip Rivers, 2 things: his decision-making and his explosive ability as a passer. I think these 2 things come together because Phillip Rivers was signed by the Colts to be a veteran quarterback who took care of the football, made big throws when he needed to, but wasn't going to be asked to be the guy. He wasn't going to have to carry the Colts to wins, to victories, and to win this division and make the playoffs and make a run. And so far, so good. The Colts defense has been very good this year, better than expectation. Their offense has let Rivers down a little bit. Their offensive line hasn't quite been as good as expected. Their running game is far worse than expected. 31st in rushing yards per attempt, which is nowhere close to where they want to be with Phillip Rivers at this point. 27th on third down, and 29th in the red zone. And what those two specific statistics tell me on third down and red zone, they can't create explosive plays. They can't get cheap touchdowns. They can't have cheap scores. How many times this year have you seen the Colts hit a big play down the field in the passing game for a touchdown? I can't remember one off the top of my head. How many times even has this team been able to hit a big run for a touchdown? That's also been rare. Defenses are asking Phillip Rivers to complete every pass, to take his time, and to make the correct decision and the right throw with accuracy, with precision, every play. And often, Rivers is rather getting taken off the field because of poor third down performance, or he's throwing an interception. He's making a mistake. And that's exactly what is wrong with the Colts. The number 8 contender in the AFC is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have had a couple very impressive wins this season, dominating the Chiefs and the Saints. They're 3-2, and they've played a really difficult schedule, losing to the Bills and the Patriots, also two top teams in the AFC. The Raiders' weakness, their flaw so far through 5 games, is exactly what we thought it was. Their defense. Their defense is young, it's inexperienced, and specifically to their defensive line just doesn't really have any difference makers that can create a turnover, that can create pressure, or can even blow up a run for a loss. Their defensive line is 30th in adjusted sack rate so far this season, and 28th in adjusted line yards, which means they're not good at getting in the backfield versus the run or versus the pass. They're 28th in creating turnovers because of a lack of pass rush to be able to cause the quarterback to make a quick decision or a bad throw. They're 26th in pass defense. They're 26th in yards per attempt running-wise, and they're 28th in yards per drive. They are 28th in points per drive. The Raiders just defensively don't do anything really well. I would say that their secondary, their young secondary, has shown pockets of promise, but the pass rush is the reason that their defense has been unable to take that next step so far. The number 7 contender in the AFC is the New England Patriots. I know through 4 weeks or 4 games for the Patriots, they would probably be higher on many people's lists, but because I'm going by record, they're here at number 7. New England doesn't actually have a lot of flaws so far. Even the flaws we thought they might have, a lack of pass rush, that's kind of been pretty good for them. The running game has been there. The offensive line's been fantastic. Of course, the secondary, and you don't ever have to worry about special teams or coaching with the Patriots. Cam Newton has solved a lot of the playmaking element, but the biggest flaw to me for New England has not really shown up yet, but where it might show up is in the playoffs, and that is playmaking from the receiver and tight end positions. I do still see that as the biggest flaw for the Patriots. Just that ability in a big play, in a big moment, when you need to pass the football on 3rd and long. If Edelman is doubled, who's making the play? Is it Damiere Byrd? Is it N'Keal Harry? Is it somebody else on this roster or not on this roster right now? Who is making that play for Cam Newton? It can't always be the running backs. It can't always be the running game. It can't always be Cam doing it himself. Somebody outside of Julian Edelman needs to step up, especially now that Edelman has shown signs of age this year, and that has become concerning. Patriots are a well-rounded team with great coaching, but if they do not have a playmaker step up, they'll only get as far as maybe a win or two in the playoffs, because you need that difference maker, especially in an AFC that has a lot of great offenses. The number 6 contender in the AFC is the Tennessee Titans. The Titans currently are undefeated, but they're only 3-0 because of the whole thing that's happening with them and their roster. Maybe that's the biggest concern for them. Maybe that's the biggest flaw. The lack of recognition of what's actually happening in the world, that could help them win games. I don't know. I'm just saying. But I think from a football perspective, which is the way I'm going to see it here, their biggest weakness is their front four, because the Titans last year, they lost Jarrell Casey in the offseason, and obviously they needed somebody to come in and replace him, and so far it hasn't really worked out. Jadeveon Clowney hasn't quite been the difference maker that they've wanted so far. He's had his moments, his spurts, but nothing too special. Their front four is just not good versus the run or the pass thus far. Their defense has really taken a significant hit so far this season, despite not playing really good offenses. I mean, they're 30th in yards allowed, they're 31st versus the run, they're 32nd in yards per attempt versus the run. This is a defense that's typically, if they were bad versus the pass because of their pass rush, has been really stout versus the run, in part because of Jarrell Casey. But now they're not good at either, and they're leaving a secondary that's decent, maybe even pretty good. They're just not allowing them to shine or succeed because they're not able to get to the quarterback. They're putting them in awkward positions because they're not able to stop the run on early downs. So the Titans are a defense that have a lot to fix, and that is something that for an undefeated team, a whole side of the ball has been way below average. So that is certainly a flaw and a concern for Tennessee. The number 5 contender, the Cleveland Browns in the AFC, have been a really great story so far this season. They're playing to expectation, for me at least, because I believe in Believeland, but they still have flaws. Let's not try to shine it up and make it all pretty and nice, because not everything has been nice for the Browns. Now, they've been a good team. They've won every game but one versus the Ravens. Baker Mayfield is what I believe will, not just could, but will hold this team back. Baker Mayfield has been nothing but below average this season. Now, he had moments in a couple of the games, specifically versus the Bengals, where he looked like maybe he had a little bit of that swagger back, but so far this year, he's been pretty bad. I mean, Baker Mayfield has ranked 26th in PFF grade so far this season, below some pretty bad names, 29th in yards passing, and he only has a pedestrian 88 passer rating. Baker Mayfield just needs to do better. He's turning the football over in key moments where it hasn't quite costed the Browns yet, but in key moments where they've been winning games and they've been needing to secure that victory, and he's giving the teams more chances to come back and win the game, specifically versus the Colts I'm talking about for sure. He has Odell Beckham. He has one of the best running games, if not the best running game in the league, and he has Jarvis Landry and Austin Hooper. He has plenty of weapons. He has a great offensive line. There are literally zero zippo excuses left for Baker Mayfield, and he's still not playing up to number 1 overall pick standards. And I'm not saying they need him to be a good team, but if he could just play like average, that would be nice and much better on my eyes when I watch the Browns. The number 4 contender in the AFC, this might sound a little bit odd, but the Baltimore Ravens, they are 4-1. They have just one loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. There are a lot of teams in this AFC that are playing good football, and the Ravens are really not one of them. Despite their record, the Ravens have shown more flaws, and this is what I said coming into the season. For an elite team that's expected to do something this year big, they have a lot of flaws, and they're showing their head this season. Specifically, their passing game on offense. It's just not been good. In fact, it hasn't just not been good, it's been terrible, like dreadful bad. The Ravens' passing offense ranks amongst the worst in the NFL. Last in pass attempts, which doesn't equate to success or quality, but they're not passing the ball a lot, which means that when they get behind in games and they need to pass, they can't, because they're ideally in an ideal world, ideal game script, they don't want to pass. That's why they're 32nd in pass attempts. Versus the Chiefs, they showed you that when they need to pass, they can't. That answer has still not been given from Baltimore. Tennessee, in the playoffs, same thing happened. I'm still concerned there. And they're 31st in passing yards overall. So it's not like when they do pass it, they're being really efficient with it. They just aren't. This team is not built to play from behind, and they will have to versus the elite teams in the AFC and the NFL. And until they fix that issue, I cannot believe in them as a true top tier contender, even in this conference. My number 3 contender in the AFC thus far through 5 weeks is Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. They are also 4-1, just like the Baltimore Ravens, but they did steamroll those Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, the thing with the Chiefs is they actually remind me a lot of the Peyton Manning Colts. They have a generational quarterback with a group of players around him on offense that are special. Hall of Fame caliber players around him with good coaching. Tony Dungy, Andy Reid. But the defense was hit and miss for the Colts. And when it was hit, they were a Super Bowl team. When it was miss, they were a upset waiting to happen in the playoffs. And that's what the Chiefs defense looks like so far. An upset waiting to happen in the playoffs. They were steamrolled by the Raiders. They were dominated by the Patriots, despite them. Brian Hoyer. That's all I got to say. But the Kansas City Chiefs, they got the great offense, the best in the NFL. They do have a pretty good pass defense, but their run defense is extremely worrisome because when you have a bad run defense and you are a team as explosive as the Chiefs, it allows other teams to keep the clock on their side, dictate pace of play, time of possession, and then it allows the margin for error to decrease even more on the Chiefs than they already allow it for themselves because they're a big passing attack. They want to score quickly, but when they're not efficient on offense and teams are running the football, they're going to lose. Like, it's straight up that simple. Their running defense this year has not really changed. Now, last year it got a lot better at the end of the year. That was a key to their success, to get off the field and get the ball to Mahomes and also be able to come back in games because teams were running the ball on them, trying to secure the victory, and they were able to stop the run. This year, 28th in yards per attempt. Not good. 25th in plays allowed per drive. 28th in time of possession. Key number here, allowed. They have the lowest stuff rank in the NFL. Stuff rank refers to the amount of runs that go for 0 yards, no gain, or negative yards. They are last in that category. The Chiefs need to fix their front versus the run, or they will be in the same position they were 2 years ago, where a team comes into Kansas City and beats them up and wins. The number 2 AFC contender through 5 weeks is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are undefeated. Thus, that's why they're number 2. The Steelers statistically don't have a lot of flaws. If I had to nitpick the Steelers thus far from a roster personnel perspective, it would be that I do believe the Steelers secondary is not as good as many people believe. I do believe it's overrated. And I do believe good quarterbacks and offenses can take advantage of that slower secondary. They're also being a tad too aggressive, in my opinion. They need to schematically change their defense. They have a fantastic front four, but for whatever reason, they're not utilizing it. They're blitzing a lot and leaving those slower corners to cover on the outside man-to-man, and it's just not working versus a lot of teams this season. It just isn't. Not to the success that we saw last year, at least. And the other nitpick I would say is they have not played anybody. Like, legitimately anybody that's worth noting. They have played the 31st strength of schedule. The second easiest schedule in the NFL through their 4 victories in their undefeated schedule. So it's going to get tougher for the Steelers. We're going to see how that defense responds, that secondary responds. But so far, the cupcakeness of their schedule, I do believe, is their biggest flaw because we don't know legitimately how good they are right now. And that secondary has concerned me even versus those weaker offenses and quarterbacks. The number 1 contender in the AFC is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are also undefeated, also 4-0. The Buffalo Bills are a team that, again, also, just like the Steelers, don't show many statistical flaws, but there are a couple that I've noticed through a few games. First, the Bills' defense is not quite as good as it has been in the last 2 seasons. Last year when they made the playoffs, last 2 years they've been one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. That hasn't been the case this year. They rank actually closer to the bottom of the league than the top of the league. And the Buffalo Bills are a team that I believe their fatal flaw is actually, unlike the Ravens, the opposite, holding a lead. The reason why I say holding a lead, there's a couple reasons for this. Their pass rush is below average. It's not very good. So when a team is trying to come back in a game, they're going to go to the air. They're going to pass the ball. The Bills have been unable to get to the quarterback. They actually rank amongst the worst teams in third down defense and in sacks. So they're not getting to the quarterback, even though they're leading a lot of these games, and they're not getting off the field on third down because their pass rush is not able to create pressure and incompletions to get off of the field. Then on the flip side, their rushing offense is the weakness of their offense. Their run offense is ranked near the bottom of the league in terms of yards per attempt, yards, all of it. Their traditional run offense, excluding Josh Allen, with just their running backs, is just not good. Now, Josh Allen can contribute in his own right, but when you need to run the football in the fourth quarter, you need to secure a game. The Bills have been unable to do that, and the one big game that you can point at is the Rams game, where the Rams probably should have won that game, but the refs kind of gave the Bills the victory. That's something to be concerned about if you're a Bills fan. Just watch out for it. I'm not saying it's going to end up costing them, but it could. It definitely could, especially because Josh Allen has been prone to coughing the ball up every once in a while, especially fumbling it in a key situation. We saw last year in the playoffs, they coughed up a lead. So just look at that going forward. That could be the fatal flaw. Holding a lead for the Bills. Every one of these teams is flawed. That's what makes this video so interesting. Which flaw will end up costing the top teams in the NFL, and which team, more importantly, can overcome their flaw and win it all? Let me know in the comment section what you guys think. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Thanks for watching. Peace.